Good morning and welcome to ASL's HR in 10.
At 10.
I'm Jason Perry.
And I'm Kimberly Bradshaw.
And we're here to talk to you about the events in the world of human resources and employment. Kimberly, I kind of think, we've probably done this for weeks, but I kind of think we can't not talk about so-called Freedom Day, can we?
Yes, I think you're right. And my little snort of derision is because how free is it?
Free is an interesting phase. I actually went out earlier this week. I was in our office on Tuesday, and I went out in and around Hastings. And I have to say, I'm pleasantly surprised how many people are wearing masks and still kind of respecting social distancing. So we're now allowed more freedom, but I think most people are demonstrating the common sense not to exercise it too much.
Yes, certainly the organisations that I talk to on a regular basis, none of them are planning on being back in the office mainly until September. You know, they might be doing a bit of a ad hoc trial over August, but
Yes.
People are still being very cautious, and I think that is only the wise way to go given the increase in rates that are happening again.
Yes, and the increase in rates is, there's a theme here I think we ought to talk about this morning, but the increase in rates is helpfully coinciding with August when most people try and take annual leave, and we have that lovely thing called the Pingdemic.
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, that really is, we laugh about it, but it really is causing a lot of staffing issues for many, many organisations. And, I think that's one, I think people really need to plan for worst case scenarios just to be on the safe side. Better to be ready than not
Yes.
if it happens to your workforce.
Yes. I mean, the reality is right now, we're at the kind of levels of case numbers that we saw in January, and we all found January rather difficult. The good news is we don't have the hospitalisation and deaths at the same rate, but we have the case numbers very similar. If it goes in the direction it's expected to, which is about twice, possibly even 3 or 4 times that level, the reality is we're going to see a large number of workplace absences, aren't we? Both from people who've tested positive and those who've been told to isolate.
Yes, and that's why I think we need to encourage people to plan out what would happen, because bigger companies, more staff, potentially they have the opportunity to cover it better. But I've seen something, a local police force put something on Facebook, and they're struggling
Yes.
both with the officers and sort of lay staff, if you like. But small companies missing one critical worker is going to have a
Yes.
huge impact.
Yes. And the difficulty is, for many small companies, statistically, if you lose one, you're probably going to lose a chunk of people. And a chunk of a small workforce can be half or 3/4 of your people, if not all of them. And we've seen many small businesses in the hospitality industry already close because of staff shortages. We've already seen, somebody shared yesterday in the HR forum their experiences of, and I think it was Co-op they referred to, which had empty shelves this week. We're hearing all the main supermarkets talk about staffing difficulties, stock levels, and potentially restrictions of hours. So when that flows through to, I say, your business, any of our local employers, we're going to see some fairly big impacts, aren't we?
We are, and I think it's really important that we reiterate what the penalties are. If any employer is viewed as encouraging in some way their individual that is self-isolating to come in to work, then the penalties are between £1,000 and £10,000, I believe.
Yes.
But equally, it is an offence to not follow self-isolation guidelines.
Yes. And I mean, it's a big point. I mean, that is really, really vital, but it's also worth reminding, because it seems a while since we've had to deal with this, ironically, but if somebody is not able to work, you do have access to COVID SSP, And actually the interesting one that only came out a month or two ago, technically it's possible to furlough somebody when they're not able to work through COVID. Now, clearly you can only do that if that person's previously been on the furlough scheme. But if they have, you can use furlough to actually prop up their pay and try and look after your people during this period, was what sneaked out of the Treasury a few weeks ago, wasn't it?
Yes, and I think that's really helpful because a lot of people, yes, it's great that there's SSP in place for people that are self-isolating or have COVID, but going on to SSP after potentially being on furlough and having less money in over all this time, furlough is absolutely the sort of the moral way to go for employers if they can.
Yeah, I think the other thing worth mentioning while we're talking about the numbers is how you deal with it if you get an outbreak. And we've had one of our clients this week who had somebody test positive, and understandably they want to do the right thing, but without a clear plan in advance as to how you're going to tackle it, how you're going to test people, they attempted very, very quickly to test every member of staff. And suddenly they found people didn't want to do lateral flow tests. And it actually created conflict in the workplace where, in some cases, arguments and swearing at people saying, I'm not doing one of those beep, beep, beep tests.
Yes, that, as you say, it's important to have a plan, and communications and encouragement are absolutely key. We always say heart and minds, employee engagement is absolutely essential, and a key part of that is getting them involved in what the next steps are and communicating regularly. So I think that's key, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. Shall we move on a little bit? One of the other things that's caught my interest, and kind of we bring them together actually, the whole flexible working thing, and the other half of this that really caught my attention is working mums.
Yes, I think there's a huge risk of sex discrimination there, isn't there? What was it the research said? Was it 63% of working mums don't have enough childcare to get through the summer holidays? That's because there are less places in nurseries and childcare environments. Obviously, if there's any impact of, COVID or self-isolation requirements in those, that all goes up the Swanee. So I think there's a big issue there for working mums.
It actually went up to 76% of single parents, working mums, didn't have access to childcare through the summer. And what seems to have happened is that I don't fully understand how or why we've got here, but it seems easier to access summer childcare if you're not working or on benefits than it is if you're working. And I mean, the kind of data is showing that 20% of working mums don't have access to their usual family and friends support network. And shockingly, almost 20% of working mums have already used their full quota of annual leave to just get through the homeschooling crisis earlier in the year when schools were sending kids home.
Yeah, it is frightening, and the concern for those people. And again, it goes back to what we've talked about already several times this morning, is, plan for that. How are you going to make sure that you are supporting your parents, single or otherwise, so that, they are looked after and maintain their normal levels of performance without all the stress going on around them.
Totally. I actually think the next couple of months is probably the most difficult that we may have faced, because we're heading into August with case numbers rising, therefore absences from those who test positive, absences from those who actually are told to isolate, and we were a week or two ago at 500,000 in a week. We're potentially going to see 10 to 20% of the workforce on isolation at any point in time. Throw into that mix summer holidays, plus those working families who just can't get access to childcare. We're in for a really, really bumpy August, I think, in HR terms and staffing levels. So plan
yes, and
ahead.
I think that will roll over into September as well, because often when you're in a crisis situation, you cope, which will be what parents will be doing over August, and then when it sort of the pressure kind of releases a bit, then you kind of have a slump. So I think that's something worth looking out for.
And it's both how you look after your business, but how you look after your people. And actually looking after your people is looking after your business. And what strikes me again is anyone who's had these people on furlough earlier in the period, there's no reason not to use some element of furlough to help support these working families through August. If they simply can't get in, they're either going to take leave, they're going to take unpaid time off, or actually you can prop them up and support them with furlough. So there are ways you can try and help, and that perhaps buys you greater commitment as you move out through September and October and we start rebuilding, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Kimberly, as ever, we've talked lots for more than 10 minutes, so this is HR in 11 today, I think I'm going for.
So we're going to be HR in 1.5 hours soon.
We'll go for that. HR in 90, I think. Yes, it's the new way forward. We really hope these are useful and you enjoy watching them. Do click the subscribe to follow us on YouTube. And don't forget, you can ask questions live by typing in the chat box on YouTube whilst we're on air. But for now, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week.